Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing well on this Thursday. All right, we have talked a lot about the big picture stuff for BYU football when it comes to spring camp, what it's going to set them up to do hopefully down the line. We've also talked about what players we're going to I myself, I'll be keeping an eye on for the BYU football program. What else is there to take away from spring camp? Well, to be honest, the biggest thing for me is how quickly this team gels. I guess the superlative is getting on the same page. BYU 2 years ago, remember in 2023, they brought in, it was like 60 some odd newcomers. They turned over more than half the roster, and it took them forever. And I don't know if they really ever fully gelled that season on their way to a very disappointing 5-7 season. Well, last year, BYU bet on continuity, added some strategic stuff in terms of transfer portal and the like, and it benefited them to the tune of going 11-2 last year. They have hit the transfer portal a little bit once again this year. They've got a lot of production, as I mentioned, coming back, more than 60% of their production last year, which is, I think, in the top third of the country, if I recall what Bill Connolly wrote for ESPN. But the thing is, how quickly will this group come together? Will the senior leaders emerge? You got guys like a Tanner Wall who are expected to emerge. Connor Pace said it himself. He thinks he could be a really, really solid voice, because you lose veteran voices like Connor Pace, like Tyler Batty. Other guys have to step into that void and lead out. I think Keanu Tanavasa, as new as he is for BYU football, will absolutely step into a leadership role. He has got leadership qualities. I've seen him while he was at Utah. I've had brief interactions with him during his time as a Ute. And that kid, he has got leadership written all over him. I could very easily see him come training camp being voted as a team captain for the BYU football program. I think Tanner Wall, same type of a deal on the defensive side of the football. Those are two guys who I don't think are afraid to speak up and lead the way. On offense, Jake Retzloff, he has got to become that field general in every sense of the word, and that is to be the guy who's pushing everybody. Bark at guys when they need to be barked at. Praise them when they need to be praised. He has to step forward and be a vocal leader. He's done a pretty good job at it so far, I feel like, at BYU, but now it's got to be bumped up to another level for him, if not multiple levels. He has to lead. He's got to lead by example. He's got to lead with his voice, and he's got to be kind of that focal point for this BYU offense. I also look at other guys, Chase Roberts, who I think is going to step into that void a little bit more and be a little more vocal. He's admitted he's more of a lead by example guy. You got to get past that sometimes as a leader. You have to open your mouth and call guys out when they need it. We had Connor Pace on this podcast, and I'll tease this ahead. I'm supposed to have him on the show next week, so get ready for another edition of the Connor Pace show coming up next week. But Connor talked about the fact that there are times that you need to bark at guys. There's other times you do it on the field. There's times you do it in private. You have to know who your teammates are and the way they respond to different circumstances. Some guys, they don't respond well when being called out in public in front of their peers. Then you take them aside in a quiet moment and say, hey, here's what I'm looking for from you. That's what guys like Chase Roberts, as I said, Jake Retzloff, Tanner Wall, Keanu Tanavasa, they've all got to do that. I also think a guy like Harrison Taggart, he has got a pretty vocal voice in that linebacker spot, especially wearing the green dot, the communication device in his helmet. He needs to be a voice as well that can lead BYU more than just calling out the plays on the field that Jay Hill is relaying to him. So I'm looking forward to seeing what those guys do as leaders, but they've got to get this team on the same page. Newcomers have to mix with old heads, to use that expression. They have to have guys who are true freshmen, who are 17 and 18 years old, mixing with return missionaries who may be married, who may have kids, who are 24 and 25 years old. BYU's roster is a pretty vast dichotomy of race, of background, of what your circumstances are, whether you've served a mission, whether you're not even a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, no matter what it is, there is a really, really interesting mix, and you have to get that all on the same page. And it's going to be critical they take advantage of the spring period to get on that same page as much as humanly possible. Yes, there is a transfer portal window that opens after spring camp. That will be something to monitor, but take advantage of this month-long camp and get as many guys, if not all of them, on the same page. I will also add this. That story from the Salt Lake Tribune, and I've already addressed it in what I believe the holes in it to be, and they are pretty large. I punched some pretty big holes in it myself on our edition on Tuesday, if you want to go check that out if you missed it. But that story, I think, could cause some guys, whether it's intentional or not, to consider what their future is at BYU. If in their mind, the NIL figures or the future of revenue sharing, which goes into effect this summer, pending that House settlement being agreed to, if those numbers don't add up in these players' minds and they feel like they're, in their eyes, being hosed or screwed over by BYU, that could be an issue that BYU has to get past. And that goes back to these leaders. They have to talk with these guys and let them know, hey, there's a bigger picture at play here. We have got a very, very potential. We've got a very, very good team based on potential and a lot of things that could go right for us this season. And we don't need selfish attitudes in this locker room. You have to get past that. You have to let the numbers go. If you're in it just for the money, it's not going to cut it. And I'm not talking just about BYU. If a player is in college football these days just to make money, great. There are programs you can go make money, but you also lose football games. You lose a lot of them because of those attitudes that they're a cancer to a football program. They get into a program and they will absolutely tear it up from the inside out. They got to be able to avoid that. And I'm interested to see how BYU navigates all that. Once again, with NIL, with the future revenue share that's going to come into effect, as I said, coming up in July. There's a lot of money on the table. Can it be something that BYU, speaking of Kalani Sitake, his team leaders, etc., can they get these guys past being so focused on the bottom line and understand that there's a whole lot more to play for as a member of the BYU football program? It's a major question mark to watch in the aftermath of that piece from the Salt Lake Tribune. All right, so there you go. Almost 30 minutes of my brain dump for you guys of what I've been thinking about spring ball over the past 2 weeks leading up to it. But looking forward to being out there on the field once again in Provo this afternoon. Full recap coming up tomorrow. But if you want the up-to-the-minute latest stuff, join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. The link is in the show notes below, whether you're watching and or listening to this. Once again, you can sign up in mere seconds and get a 14-day free trial to get the inside scoop on all things BYU that I'm seeing out there on the field this afternoon. But as always, thank you for your guys' support of the podcast. Thank you for being with us here every single day, as we like to call you, our everydayers on the Locked On Cougars podcast.